the graduation tests and like the OATs, you know, there's so much pressure on teachers to teach to the test basically. You know, I've spent over 200 hours in a classroom, and I mean they're cutting writing tests from different grade levels. So they're not focusing on, you know, they're not focusing on writing because they don't need to pass their, you know, to pass their test for that year. And I think, you know, it starts in the elementary schools and it just snowballs, and by the time you're in high school you're still underprepared already because of state mandates to pass those tests.
A comment first and a question. When you talk about parental involvement, you guys all know I have kids in elementary school, and I'm absolutely astonished, and this is private elementary school, so I'm paying my public school taxes and I'm paying private school tuition, and there are a grand total of about 6 parents that are involved in anything, and it is breaking my heart literally in two right now, that because of what I'm doing for my education, I can't be one of the 6 that's always been there. And I don't know what the answer is. I mean, we offer free babysitting, we offer food, we offer, you know, anything to get parents to come and be engaged with their school's administration and faculty. And it's just heartbreaking. And this is, again, a school where you're paying tuition on top of your public school taxes. And then my question was, if you came across in your research, and if you didn't, maybe Dr. Kay can address, did you find anything in the trend towards recruiting potential teachers from business and industry? My husband works in a very heavily dominated math and science industry, and his colleagues are being pulled away left and right, and he's ready to go himself. He has 22 years there, he wants to do 25, and he wants to go teach high school math and science. And I just wondered if you came across it in your research, or if you didn't, if Dr. Kay could address that trend.
As far as our research, they suggested that we should have like the early college high school program has, where it's, you know, the college instructors come to teach in high schools, they have that, but they never really talk about people in the field. But obviously it's going to merit because, you know, if they can see why math is important. Like, oh, this guy is really cool, you know, and his basis in mathematics and like motivates students. But
I know that even some colleges are actually accepting candidates who may have considerable experience in the field and may not have that degree, because they realize that there are so many people out there that are in business fields and are in these fields that have been doing it for so long. They're probably some of the best people to teach, rather than people that have just been in school the whole time and maybe not have hands-on direct experience. So I have read a little bit about that. I'm not sure about high schools, but I know a little bit about colleges.
They will have what's called alternative route for licensure, and people can go in from their previous careers and go through a program that sort of expedites their preparation for the classroom. BW is now going to participate in Teach Grants, which pay pay grants during your time that you're here. If you spend 3 years in a high-need school when you're done in math, science, language, it's the same defense, national defense, the person talked about from financially, it's the same program. There are plenty of those programs out there. There's still a shortage of qualified people in those areas, science, math, etc. But the teachers become so quickly disheartened by the burden that they bear, not just at high school, but much earlier. And for example, it's systemic. It isn't any, as you said, one area that you could say, if we could just fix this thing with parents, we could fix this thing with whatever. It's really systemic. Something that's not well known because it's not well publicized, for example, is in most inner city elementary schools, the teacher will start with 25 third graders. After the first semester, she'll still have 25 third graders, but only 1/3 of them are the same students she had the first day of school. By the last day of school, she's lucky to have 20% of the same students that she had the first day, and the other have turned over 2 or 3 times during that year. So that transience of the population, which is mostly produced by poverty, people that need to move because of jobs, because of housing, because of breakups of marriages or relationships and lost jobs, etc., that move a lot, then make it such that we just forget in our suburban backgrounds that you think the teacher has the same students, and so sure, that teacher's accountable at the end of the year. But in many, many, many inner cities across the country, that is not the case. So your ability to affect that child's learning when he comes in or she comes in and out 2 or 3 times in your classroom, even if you kept up with the 20% all the time, you're going to lose out because you've got to go do something with that other 80% that's moving in and out and in and out. So those are some facts that make the teaching really, really a challenge, and that starts early. So that by the time you're in high school, it isn't as shocking to realize that students will get to high school with 4th grade reading ability if they've been in 16 schools. And so it's systemic. It's just really, really hard to say where it starts. Some of it's the dollars, some of it's the preparation. There's plenty of blame, as you said, to go around. The challenge is, what do we do at the colleges when we have an ever-increasing need for students, or else we don't need colleges? How do we join with those schools? And I think you've done a nice job of showing the split between what the high schools and the K-12 schools do and what the college expects. That really needs to be much closer than it is now. And I can tell you here at VW, you've got a school district across the street. We don't do much with Korea. They're literally across the street. You know, I mean, we do much with them. You know, we have a program where they can take some classes here, but we only go in those schools, I think, when we've got specific projects that go on, and that's a very typical separation of activity right there. Everything from the public-private split that creates that, et cetera, and I think that there are plenty of places to go in and start making a difference, but probably any one of them is not going to make a huge difference.
The irony is that there are some, as Karen Durst mentioned, this period of time that you need to have to prepare for college maybe shouldn't be done in high school or colleges like this. There are post-grad years that people do for athletics primarily, so that they can.
They redshirt for athletics.
Yeah, they want to play Division I, and they aren't ready to play Division I, so they go to a post-grad year so that they can do what they need to do to get ready both for college and college athletics. Another observation is that in other countries, there's this gap year that's the culture. And part of that is about maturation or life experience that you do, not about your academic skills, but you do some things in between. But in both cases, that's for people that can afford it because it's really pricey. So it's not immediately accessible, probably to people that need it.
Well, but like in Israel, you all do a year of service. Every high school graduate does a year of service to his or her country, primarily military,
Yes.
but not required. And that's a sort of growing up year for some.
Yeah.
But if that's not going to make them more prepared academically, but it does help their maturation
Yeah.
in
Yes.
many ways. Helps it.
So for a different reason, but
For
it's
different
still the
reasons.
same concept.
Yeah. And we've been dealing with it. You saw the history. We've been dealing with this. There were all those prep schools that were attached to Harvard were all high schools because the students weren't ready. So they just started their own prep school. So it's not a new problem. It's just a larger problem because we want more of our students in college than were in college during the Harvard years. We want a larger percentage of students. We need a larger percentage. And we haven't figured out even how to get that many high school students graduated, let alone on to college. The percentage of students graduating from high school now is not that different than the 1920s. It's just that in the 1920s, you could go to the Ford Motor Company or the slaughterhouse down the street and you could get a job and you could make a living wage and even have a family and have one income. So we've not created any differences in our educational structures to mirror the changes in our economic and other needs. So it's a huge problem, but I think that this group's done a nice job of laying out a lot of the issues that we're dealing with and where we will go with it. But I think as potential leaders in higher ed, it's important for you to be able to look at all these perspectives and see what's in everybody's best interest as you're going forward, not to blame any one area, because if you do, then you'll think that area can be fixed. And it's not likely that that one area is going to make a huge difference in what's going to happen. But we saw our community college last week. we saw Tri-C, we saw a young man who started how many levels before he got to